Hi, I would like to go through this particular problem with you here. So here you're given a function 13 cosine x, and we want to find make a conjecture about the slope of tangent lines at the indicated point, which means when x is pi over 2. According to the idea that we discussed in class, so we are going to construct a whole bunch of secant lines, and we use slope of secant lines to approximate the slope of tangent lines, right? So that's what it is. So first of all, if I quickly visualize what's going on here, and then this is what it is. So this is the graph of 13 cosine x. So 13 cosine x looks like this, okay? And extends to the left and to the right indefinitely. And then this is going to be 2 pi. And pi over 2 is somewhere here. This is your pi over 2 right here. Pi over 2. And this is going to be pi, okay? Now, what's going on here? It is this. We imagine that we talked about the tangent line. So basically, the tangent line is just the headlights when you're driving a car along this road, right? So basically, this is the slope of the line that we're trying to find. And this particular question says, okay, we need to do approximate this tangent line, slope of tangent line, by finding the slope of secant line passing through these 2 points first, okay, in this interval. So I just want to help you visualize what that means. So pi over 2 to pi, okay, pi over 2 to pi. So let me zoom in here. So in other words, I want to use the secant line. This is pi, this is pi, this point is pi. This point is pi over 2. So in other words, I want to use, let me see. I kind of want to draw a perfect straight line, but that's okay. So I want to, the question asks us to use this, first of all, use this line, the slope of this secant line to approximate the slope of this tangent line. So in other words, this is the calculation that I need to compute. So I need to find the slope of this blue line. So it's going to be f of pi, right? That's this particular point, minus the f of pi over 2. And why pi and pi over 2? Because I was given the interval pi over 2 to pi. So that's why we use these endpoints, these two endpoints, divided by, and this is the change in y, divided by change in x, pi minus pi over 2. If you can recall that the f of x is 13 cosine x, so therefore it's going to be 13 cosine pi minus 13 cosine pi over 2, okay, divided by pi minus pi over 2. Now, let's do the algebra. This is equal to, sometimes you may quickly recognize cosine pi over 2 is 0, right? And cosine pi is equal to -1, all right? If you ask me why, because cosine pi is here, the reference angle is 0, and it is negative on this, in this quadrant, and then I mean on this boundary, and then the 0, cosine 0 is 1. That's why I have -1. So as a result, this is what we have: -13 on top, pi over 2 on the bottom. And if you use your calculator, this is about, let me see, I actually use my calculator to do that. It's -8.276, 0, because it asks 4 decimal places. So this is my answer for my first one. So that's how I get to my -8.2760. Now similarly, the question continues to ask you to decrease the length of the interval. So originally it's pi over 2 over pi, pi over 2 to pi. Now it's pi over 2 to pi over 2 plus 0.1. So how do I compute the slope of this secant line? So basically I want to go back to my graph, just show you what's going on, okay? So at this point, this is pi over 2. So suppose this point is pi over 2 plus 0.1, okay? I'm going to use a different color, say green one. This is the green one, pi over 2 plus 0.1. And now we are going to use the slope of this secant line. So now, slope of this green line, this is the new secant line. Do you see that this line is getting closer to the red line? So it should be a better approximation. So that's what we are trying to do. Slope of this green line to approximate the slope of tangent line. So it's just same idea. When you do that, you're going to use f of pi over 2 plus 0.1 minus f of pi over 2, right? Divided by pi over 2 plus 0.1 minus pi over 2, which is 0.1 at the end. So here you have 13 cosine pi over 2 plus 0.1 minus 13 cosine pi over 2 divided by 0.1. And again, this is 0. So you're going to just use your calculator to plug in pi over 2 plus 0.1 into your calculator and then do this algebra. Then you will get to here. And of course, you should be able to take advantage of decimals. So this is my decimals just for convenience purpose. I already type in my function f of x, which is cosine 13 cosine x. And this is what we are actually trying to compute, right? So it's going to be f of whatever the interval, the endpoint of the interval you're given minus f of the beginning of the endpoint of the interval, which is pi over 2 in this case, divided by a minus, so whatever the endpoint minus pi over 2. So when the endpoint is pi, so I type in a is pi. Now this will be 13 cosine pi minus 13 of cosine pi over 2. This will be pi minus pi over 2. That's how I get to my first answer. Of course, it will be a little tedious if you don't use your technology wisely. You have to type in a lot. So I would suggest you use this in a smart way. So now the next one, if you can recall, is pi plus 0.1, right? 0.1. So let me zoom out a little because I want to use my keyboard. So this is what I need. So the next one is a equals pi plus 0.1. Oops, 0.1. Now here, because I already defined what I want to compute, this is the slope of the secant line. So when I change this a here, it automatically changes the a here and a here. So I immediately get the answer. I don't really have to do a lot of calculation. So keep this in mind. Previously we have, say, negative 8.2760, right? Now when this is the a is pi plus I'm sorry, that's probably not right. The first one is pi. The second one actually is pi over 2 plus 0.1. I'm sorry, pi divided by 2 plus 0.1. And then I get to this guy. This is what I get to. Negative 12 so it's going to be negative 12.9783. Now if I continue to make my interval smaller and smaller, so this time it's 0.001, okay? And you see that this changes to 12.99978, so negative 12.99978. if you can recall, I'm gonna also note down. For this one, the interval is from pi over 2 to pi. For this one, the interval is pi over 2 to pi over 2 plus 0.1. For this one is pi over 2 to pi over 2 plus 0.01. I believe probably at this point you already kind of guessed. Okay, it seems like it's approaching to negative 13, right? I'm gonna do one more and make sure that you agree with me that it's approaching negative 13. So what do? I need to make this interval even shorter. So it's gonna be pi over 2 plus 0.001, okay? And you see that it is, in fact, it is getting closer to negative 13. So, in other words, my answer for the previous question, what is my conjecture about the slope of the tangent line? I would say it's negative 13. So this finishes this problem. I kind of probably do explain too much, but it would never hurt to explain more than less. Please ask if you have questions.